On the cusp of a big idea in here.
Is that what this is?
We've been watching the end of the Europa League championship. Bulldogs' favorite, Manchester United, losing to Spurs here. And we've just been sort of talking through this game during the breaks about soccer, and like everything we know is kind of like we half know it.
Right.
Or quarter know it.
I mean, you're talking about how good Bruno Fernandes has been for United and how he's not going to, be much beloved at all because they don't win anything, but he's been great and like he does. And I'm like, I don't know. I know what I'm talking about over here.
Everything each of us is saying, we're just like not sure.
Right.
Who's playing whom on Sunday, and is this the first time this has happened? Basically, it'd be we're thinking about a soccer podcast, like the who are the two guys with the big podcast? See, this is what I mean. We don't even know the name of their show.
Men in Blazers?
Men in Blazers.
I don't know their
only
names.
It's us.
Yeah.
And we don't ever look anything up.
Right. Yeah.
And we just sort of talk like this about it. The show probably sounds like that normally to some people.
Sure. Yeah.
We're always just like not really. Yeah. We don't really have it.
Right. I didn't know we were really planning for this when I started, but of course, Tottenham wins Europa. That means they're in the Champions League next year. United gets nothing. Like they made the final. Do they at least get back in Europa next year? Like I don't know. Okay, boy, that stinks.
Sal Capaccio on the Wester Hotline. Let me just throw this out there. Sal, would you like to be our first guest on our new soccer podcast? Doesn't matter if you know anything.
Two guys who know nothing is the name of the podcast.
No pressure.
I would fit right in then.
You fit right in.
Two guys who know little. I'll go with little. We don't know nothing. We know enough just to be stupid about it.
Your thoughts on Richarlison's performance today for Spurs? When you get around to it. There is a lot of football, and it's a lot of it's interesting stuff today. I don't even know really what the right order is. Let's start with Hard Knocks. That's a pretty cool thing. I'm sure we'll see a lot of you, Sal, in the course of the series. What should we know about like how they get chosen? I know there's like sort of a process of elimination piece and other factors that go into it.
Well, according to what I knew, for years, the Bills would not be eligible for Hard Knocks. But I do know they did tweak the rules over the last year or so. And with the new rules, apparently, the Bills would fall under those rules.
Why, by the way?
Why were they ineligible and what changed?
That's what I'm figuring out to make sure without giving wrong information. But I think here's one thing.
The playoffs?
Teams that made the...
Go ahead.
You ready?
Yep.
Teams that made the playoffs in the previous two seasons can no longer opt out.
Oh, okay.
So because the Bills, previously, because they'd made the playoffs, they could opt out. Teams with first-year head coaches were also ineligible. Obviously, that didn't happen. Teams that have been on Hard Knocks in the previous 8 seasons were also ineligible. So I guess that covers it, right? I just want to I just want to kind of get everything in here for why that would be the case. So therefore, that kind of made the Bills eligible. What I don't know though is what the process was with the NFL going to them yet, and asking them, and if the Bills didn't want to do it, but the league forced them. They basically said, yeah, that's fine, we'll do it. Those kinds of things we get answers to. But yes, the rules changed where the biggest thing was we all knew the first-year head coach, that was a big thing. But if you had been in the playoffs the last 2 seasons, you could opt out before. That is no longer the case and was not, so the Bills can be in it.
Well, I think they're a fun choice.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I mean, look, they have a lot of storylines, right? I mean, I heard you guys talking about could they focus on wide receiver because of, the comments that were made. Sure, that's possible. I mean, do they focus on Josh Allen? He's the league MVP. He's getting married this offseason, right? Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of a layup storyline. What Hard Knocks normally does is they focus on kind of under the radar players who can, maybe make or break, being on the roster and you don't know. Is there somebody like that on the roster they'll focus on? Will it be Joe Andreessen, local guy, right? Little things like that they would focus on. How about DeMar Hamlin? Obviously, with DeMar in training camp and his story, that would be something I would think that they would highlight here. So I just think there's a lot of angles they can go with here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thinking of the sort of under the radar guys, I'd seen a story about one of their street free agents, and it's a receiver. Okay, so I mean, it fits thematically, certainly with our agenda. I nod, wink, wink. I think it's Virginia Tech, right? Stephen Gosnell, who's had a bunch of injuries, but great hands. He reads like a Mac Hollins on paper. And when I first came across a story about him after, maybe a week or two after the signings of all the undrafted free agents, I thought, this is a guy that the fan base is going to get a look at, and if he catches everything, it's going to be, I don't remember the kid from Nebraska now, Brendan Riley? Like, it's going to be another, Brandon Riley. Thank you. It's going to be a version of that. Like, I wonder if that's the first guy I'm thinking of. When you say under the radar, I just feel like that guy, before I knew about Hard Knocks, has the potential to be a guy that we are getting asked about, like, pretty regularly.
Yes, I agree with that. They're looking for the underdog storyline, right? A storyline that fans who aren't really fans of the team can also kind of get to know and be familiar and get invested in, right? You know how that happens with characters and anything. That's just what TV is all about. They get invested, and I think that could be the case. But obviously there's going to be some with Josh Allen in there. I think that he just presents his own. And then, you in different levels of Hard Knocks, I've watched most of them over the years. You get varying degrees off the field stuff. Sometimes you get way more off the field with some teams than others. Sometimes it's just strictly on the field. So I wonder about that. You're at Pittsford, you're in Rochester. There'll be some days in Buffalo, I'm sure, on the off days. You also have preseason games that are featured during these training camp Hard Knocks. That'll be a part of it. That's back in Buffalo. But I wonder how much off the field, how much in Rochester, how much in the dorms, things like that. That's always different depending on from team to team.
One more idea I think that could be an interesting segment in Hard Knocks would be Milano and where he's at in his career. We know he's not really talkative, but just we're all kind of wondering, right? Just where he's at, what the contract thing meant to the Bills' idea for his future, and maybe we'll get to training camp and he's like, I'm as good as new, and maybe we'll get to training camp and he's got work to do. That's a little bit of an uncertainty, and he's been so good and so much a part of all their winning that I might think he would be a good, name for the storyboard.
Yeah. I mean, I think a guy like Joey Bosa would be good for a story like that, right? Like a follow around. Like at this point in his career, he switched teams from L.A. to Buffalo. Where is he at his point in his career with some of the injuries and things like that? And then you'll just get your characters. Deion Dawkins will be a character on there. There's no doubt. Like, he'll just have the personality. You guys mentioned Keon Coleman earlier today, I heard. And, that's right. That's a character. And there'll be different kinds of, angles for those two guys specifically, but no doubt about that. And let's remember, this is the training camp Hard Knocks. There are two different versions now of HBO's Hard Knocks. The other is the in-season Hard Knocks. That will feature all four NFC East teams. They'll follow the NFC East teams, the Giants, the Commanders, the Eagles, and the Cowboys throughout the season, and they'll make a Hard Knocks for the 18-week regular season with them.
Certainly as it comes closer, maybe we'll have more clarity, or maybe it'll wait until camp actually opens and there's a mandatory report date. Of course, we'll have a mandatory mini camp before then, but the James Cook piece will maybe be an interesting piece to watch. How much behind the scenes we get from either side, his side or the Bills side, and that's assuming, and I don't have to be right about this, that they don't come to some kind of an agreement between now and the summer.
I wonder if Hard Knocks could help the Bills with Cook. Everybody's different, but, he's out there talking about money and making a somewhat of a spectacle about the season he had. And now Hard Knocks is coming to Rochester, and he's going to skip it. That'll be a big story if, where is he?
Yeah, for sure.
If he comes in and, there's no problem, my time will come and that, and he could score points.
I agree. I mean, we'll know, before they get there kind of a little bit more. Maybe, we don't have to know that, but if he shows up to mandatory minicamp, then that might be a good sign. If he doesn't, then there's going to be a lot more kind of thinking about that and watching. But even if he does show up to training camp, there's a storyline there. And Hard Knocks has had these stories over the years, these contractual stories and things like that, and the Antonio Brown saga with the Raiders a few years ago, right? There's always been something. There's often been something along the lines of that with these stories.
There could always be a hold in with James Cook too.
That's right.
He's on the field, but he's not.
Yeah, he's there and just not participating because he's not happy with his contract. That's more and more the move now.
So that'll be fun to talk about and to watch. The Tush Push was not banned. 10 teams voted against a ban. They needed 8 or 9, so it was enough to not have there be a ban. The Bills were not one of them. They voted for the ban of the Tush Push. But Philadelphia gets its way. Jason Kelce shows up. I wonder, Sal, I want to hear how you read sort of the way today transpired. I wonder how many teams might have been on the fence going into today and maybe were swayed. Like the reporting was, and the betting line even was, this was going to happen, and then it didn't.
I think that's probably a good assumption that at least a few teams might have been on the fence, not knowing. Then you get there and you kind of hear the hubbub. You get a feel for it with the trial balloons or whatever, people putting things out there in the media and reading some of the public backlash or public support and how it goes, and then eventually maybe you're like, you don't want to be the team on that side of it, right? You don't want to be a team that gets, okay, well, we sound like we're crybabies or something. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe you're a team that you're really not sure, then you hear a guy like Jason Kelsey talk about it, and he says, hey, I heard him a clip of a podcast that I saw today. He said to his brother, if he just had to do 80 tush pushes a game, he would do it. Like, it wasn't actually as bad as people said on his body. Now, there were reports about that being the case, that it was just, really tough on him and other linemen. His own owner, obviously, Jeffrey Lurie, and, they had a lot to say about it. So, no doubt, I think it could have been different, walking into the meeting versus walking out of the meeting in the vote for some owners.
So Sean McDermott, of course, on the competition committee, started like the Bills' window into this, so to speak, talking about why he would be, for all intents and purposes, for a ban. The Bills end up voting for the ban, and again, it doesn't pass. I would imagine there are discussions, McDermott, Bean, even Terry Pagula, but I wonder if it would have been McDermott's call. Or do you think not? I'm on the competition committee. I'm not saying he was flexing, but I'm in the room, and this is how I feel as the head coach of the team. Do you think maybe the Bills would have given him the leeway to decide on behalf of the franchise, or maybe not?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to if they'd give him the leeway to decide, but I certainly would think his voice would carry a lot of weight in this discussion because he's on the competition committee and because he's the head coach of the team, both. So if Terry Pagula and Brandon Beane feel strongly the other way, maybe they vote the other way. But I think this is an indication that they're probably leaning on Sean. He's giving them a recommendation, and maybe they both feel the same way and say, no. And maybe they're convinced by Sean McDermott. But I definitely would think that Sean McDermott's voice would carry a lot of weight in this for them, for sure.
We're going to watch Philadelphia go week to week and use the tush push against teams that voted to ban it. Every team they play except Detroit voted to ban it. And Bulldog brought up earlier, will the Bills still run it?
Yeah, with McDermott being as front and center as he was about the injury concern, I wonder where he ends up standing when it really comes down to it. They need a yard, and you want to win football games, and do you still continue to use it? Because a principled stand obviously would be like, I don't think this is safe, but if it's within the rules, I think you're probably going to go ahead and do it.
None of it's safe.
Right.
Well, it's a good question. I do not think the Bills will stop using it, because through our conversations with Sean McDermott, I think that he's kind of made it clear that he has one hat for the competition committee, has one hat for his head coach of his team. The competition committee, Sean McDermott member, says we shouldn't have this play. It's tough on our guys. Safety concern around the league. We don't have enough data yet to completely show all this. He understands this. He said this, but that's kind of what he feels about it. However, if it is in the rule book and we're good at it, then we should be able to use it, right?
Yep.
I think that's to me where he's going to fall. I don't think that he's going to say, I'm not doing it because I voted against it because that would look really bad. I think he's saying, as a competition committee member, I don't think we should do this in the league. But hey, guess what? Since you're saying, to me, it'd be the same thing as, okay, if he voted against it, it was also a rule. In this rule was pulling the runner forward. Is he going to instruct his guys now not to pull his runner forward into the end zone because he voted it? No, he's not going to do that.
Right.
It's part of the rules. You can do it. You might as well do it.
And for what it's worth, and I don't know that I guess I don't see enough of a difference, but I feel like he has tried to differentiate what they do, if not more than subtly, from what the Eagles do. So maybe that's his out. Like, you can just say, we never really did exactly what they do anyways. It's not what we do isn't as dangerous. Maybe. I don't know. I don't want to put words in his mouth. But I do know, am I correct about this? There's been some effort made to differentiate their version of it from the Eagles.
Yes, and without I'd have to go back and see specifically, but I think of Reggie Gilliam here talking about how even he would make sure he's lined up in a certain spot or something like that. Maybe that's even rules or stuff, something along those lines. That's right. Yes, I think that's the case. And look, I think that's why this is where the ambiguity part comes in, and part of the reason why it actually did not pass is because of the wording and the confusion from a lot of people of, well, how are you going to enforce this? How are you going to see it? Because I believe, and I've said this to you guys, I believe this should be banned, but it's not about the tush push. I don't care about that's not the play I don't think should be banned. I just don't think you should be allowed to push a runner forward intentionally. Okay, high school, you are allowed to push the pile. You are not allowed to push the runner. But as people correctly say, well, what's the difference? Can you really tell? If there's a bunch of guys in there, how can you tell? And I would think there's a lot of people, and going back to the owners' meetings in March, I will tell you that that's what the discussion was. It's like, hey, we had this rule on the books before 2005. We kind of should go back to that. That would eliminate the tush push. It's not voting against the tush push. I think that's what that's today's talking point. And I think that there's probably some of that. I think what's really happening here is people debating, should the overall concept of pushing runners forward be allowed? And the tush push is part of that concept.
Yep.
Protector of the year. I didn't know much about this, but I guess I see that Deion Dawkins is getting a lot of credit for inspiring the idea.
Deion Dawkins was on the first I had heard this. Maybe I'm sure it had been percolating before that.
But the award show, wasn't it?
No, it was actually the week. It was the week of that or before that. Okay. It was he was on Colin Cowherd's podcast on his radio show, and Deion Dawkins was on Colin Cowherd. I happened to be listening. He goes on Colin sometimes, and he said on there, he said, you know, these guys. I think they were talking about Josh winning the MVP, right? Like if he should be able to win the MVP or if he's going to. And he said, hey, listen, it's great and all that, and they get in all these awards. He's like, hey, defensive lineman can win defensive player of the year, but offensive lineman, there's nothing for us. It's always the skill guys. It's the quarterback, the running back, the wide receiver. He's like, I really think that we should have something like this. And he said, and I've talked to people about this. And so I think it was percolating. And then when you get to the award show, that's something else that it just kept going from there.
Yeah.
And really, I had not heard much on it since then. So for today to happen, I think it's super cool for Deion Dawkins and for the league. It is an award that, you know, should be recognized in some way. You guys know, I mean, I'm involved with the Trench Trophy Award in Western New York. That is the award given to the best lineman. It could be offensive or defensive lineman. The reason I'm involved, my old high school athletic director and defensive coordinator, Carl Curris, who passed away last year, he founded that award. He's the one that said we should have an award because the Connolly Cup is always given to the best skill guy in Western New York. Well, we should reward the linemen. And he founded that, and it's become a really, really big deal, and it's been super cool to watch. And just from that place, I see what Deion's doing at the NFL level to get to where it is today, I think is super cool.
Yeah, look, I don't need to be inundated with more and more awards. I mean, there's the weekly, you know, the FedEx, Air, Ground, whatever, all that stuff. But, like, end-of-season stuff, we talked about this back in the winter, maybe when Dawkins first talked about this with Colin Cowherd, like you're referencing, and I said something about, like, college has, you know, the tight end, the Mackey Award.
Outland Trophy.
The Outland Trophy. They've got all these different tiers, you know, in addition to the Heisman. So, you know, I don't see why you shouldn't have that in pro football. Sal, overall, it feels like a big L today for Roger Goodell. It was thought that he wanted the tush push banned. It was thought he wanted the seedings revamped for the playoff field. And it was, I thought, also thought to be that they were going to talk about a contract extension for him, and none of that happened as these meetings have come to a close. So I don't know. It's not often you see him take the contract extension thing. Could just be logistics. I don't know, but nothing really happened positively from his end here that maybe he was hoping to get.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I agree with you that it was very much reading like Goodell wanted these things to pass that did not pass, right? Specifically the playoff seeding, and that's where the push went to the Lions. Hey, you know, you guys want to propose this or whatever, and the tush push seemed like it was something too where he was on that side of it. So it is really interesting. I don't know about the contract thing. That's very possible. I think now for the last 3 contracts, they said he's going to serve one more and that's it. And then he signs another one. So it just winds up happening, you know, every single time. So we'll see where they go with that. But you're right. I think it reads to me like, you know, today probably wasn't a good day for the commissioner and things that he wanted.
We really are out of time. But Sal, have you ever, some of these rule change ideas we get time to sit with and ponder, have you ever heard of moving the onside kick up by 1 yard? before today?
No, and I think there's got to be data points about this, right? There's got to be. So, when we get a chance, we haven't talked to Chris Tabor yet, the Bills' new special teams coordinator. That'll happen sometime soon over the next, the medias that we're going to have. I'm going to ask him. We'll try and find out. What was the data point? I'm sure we'll find out a little bit more, some background, but I'd never seen or heard anything like that until today.
When are they back on the field?
Tuesday, May 27th, next Tuesday. No, I shouldn't say it. They're on the field. Like, they're on the field this week. We are down there on Tuesday.
Okay.
They are on the field every day, pretty much. They're doing stuff, different kinds of workouts and things like that. Next Tuesday and then the following Tuesday are 2 media days for us to talk to people. And then the following week, mandatory minicamp wraps it all up, June 10th, June 11th, and June 12th.
All right, I'm making a note not to take Tuesdays off for like golf or something else because I want to be here for the media days. Sal, thanks for coming on today.
All right, you got it. Thanks.
All right, it's our dude Sal Capaccio on the Wester Hotline. His appearances